We'll just give it 1 more minute and then we'll make a start. Right, it's 2 minutes past 8, so I'm going to make a start if that's okay with everybody. I'm sure we'll get a few more people joining on. So Kate, you just keep an eye on the group, just to let people in as and when. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Marjorie Owen. I'm the Chief Officer for King's Pharmacy Leicester and Rutland. So thank you for joining us and appreciate you joining us this evening. You're probably still having your tea and doing what you need to as well with family, etc. We do appreciate you joining. But we'll make a start just so we can hopefully finish on time as well. This webinar is being recorded, so it will be added to our website shortly after tonight's webinar, and it can be accessed via our website as well. So moving on, just a couple of introductions. We do have some guest speakers tonight. The first being Rose Belment, who is a PCN Senior Pharmacy Technician, and he's going to be talking to you guys for the next 10-15 minutes or so, Rose, is that fair to say, about the NHSE Midlands Pharmacy Technician Group, and all the work that's been going on there. And then I'm going to hand over to our colleague Gareth, who's part of Community Pharmacy Leicester and Rutland, who's going to provide a big update around Pharmacy First. So you may already be aware that the thresholds have been modified or tweaked a little. So he'll be giving you news of what that means, and more importantly, how you, with your pharmacy teams, can achieve those thresholds as well. And then finally, I'm going to hand over to Sam Keating, who's with us tonight as well. So really pleased that Sam's been able to join us, who's going to give us a vaccination update. Obviously, we're kind of flying high with flu season now, aren't we? So it's all busy, jabbing away, and I know you all are as well. So I'm going to hand over to Rose first, if that's okay. Rose, are you okay to share your slides and share your screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you able
Sorry.
to share? That's okay, no problem.
I think it's because I've joined Teams in the browser rather than in the app.
Oh no, it shouldn't make a difference. I'm on the browser as well. So if you go to your right-hand side, there should be an arrow that's pointing to the sky, saying share on the right-hand side, next to the button leave. You'll be able to share slides that way.
Yep, just bear. I've got it coming up now, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you, Rose.
Can you see that?
It's just coming through. Yes, we can. That's brilliant. You just need to pop it in presentation mode, or however you want to do it. But yeah, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So yeah, as Rajshri said, I am Senior Pharmacy Technician for North West Leicestershire Primary Care Network, but I'm also on the NHS Midlands Pharmacy Technician Leadership Group. So that involves members of the pharmacy technicians across the 11 ICBs in the Midlands, having representatives to be able to update further pharmacy technicians and that information goes above to regional and then also to the chief pharmaceutical fellow, so that we can get better idea of what needs to be done for pharmacy technicians and any updates, training gaps in practice where we can look at improving things for pharmacy technicians. So a little bit about myself. I've got 16 years experience working in pharmacy. I started off working in pharmacy like a lot of people, just working as a Saturday job, and then never really looked back, I guess. Just carried on, decided I didn't want to do my A-levels anymore, didn't want to go to university, and then just did all my training through community pharmacy, and worked my way up. And then I became a registered pharmacy technician in 2016. Left community pharmacy to go to hospital pharmacy because I just wanted a little bit more of a challenge really, and a change of scenery. And then now I obviously work in general practice, where I've worked since 2021. So I've just put this slide in to show you a bit of the structure as to where we are with the regional pharmacy technician leadership group. So the regional team.
Sorry, Rose. Are we meant to be jumping? Are we meant to be on the next slide because it hasn't moved on from
Oh, has
slide
it not?
one? No,
Apologies.
so you might just need to put it in presentation mode so you can see where you're at. Thank you.
Has that gone into presentation mode now?
No, it hasn't gone into presentation mode. You need to press the icon on the right at the bottom of your screen, on the right, which is presentation mode.
Sorry, I might be being absolutely blind.
No, so if you go to the bottom of your tab, yeah, there's yeah, I can see the icon. Then there's the icon with the 4 squares. Jump one and then to the next one across. Can you see that?
That one.
Next one. No, the other way. That's it. Yeah, that one.
Perfect. Sorry. So can you see that slide now?
We're just waiting for it to load up. I can't see a change yet. No, it hasn't changed, which is very odd. Should have put it in presentation mode.
Has that changed?
Not on my screen, no. No, it hasn't. But let's crack on. Let's crack on anyway. And
is it better if I do it like this? Can you see the governance structure that way?
I can't personally. I can't read the slides, but I haven't got my glasses on this evening. I'm going to be completely honest. So I'm not able to read that, and I don't think. There we go. That's much better. Thank you, Rose.
Okay, I'll just do it manually if it's not working. So
Fabulous.
Apologies about that. So the yellow box here is the regional pharmacy technician leadership group. That then gets the information that we get from those meetings then gets shared locally with senior pharmacy technician groups. So at the moment there isn't one for LLR. We have set up a pharmacy technician newsletter, which we should have got, that should have been communicated out to pharmacy technicians. And they should have had the opportunity to sign up to that mailing list to find out about those updates. If you're working with anybody who is a pharmacy technician that isn't signed up to those newsletters, I would strongly advise to do so, because when we set up the local pharmacy technician group in the next coming months, it would be really great if we could get a candidate on board from community pharmacy, just so that they can have a say in what's important to them and what would make the profession better from a community pharmacy point of view. I do think at the moment we're probably lacking some input from community pharmacy technicians, but I do also appreciate a lot of those staff members have gone from community pharmacy to PCNs and hospital pharmacy. So hopefully we can get some input from community pharmacy technicians, so that we can take their ideas on board as well. So there is also the regional pharmacy leadership monthly briefing. Now this is just over Teams once a month, usually on the last Thursday of every month. I'm not sure if people are already aware of this, or if it's completely new, but it is a really good way in keeping up to date with what's happening regionally as well as nationally. So if anybody isn't part of those already and does want to sign up, the email address to sign up is at the bottom of the page, and you can also sign up for the monthly newsletter, because I do appreciate in community pharmacy you don't always get an hour over lunch. Not all of you close for an hour, so you are struggling with time to join those. So if you sign up to the monthly newsletter, you will get information on what's been happening and what's happening going forward. So this is just regarding the LLR pharmacy technician newsletter that we have worked on. So we've only sent out the first edition so far. We're currently working on the second edition for that one. We did also send out information for Pharmacy Technician Day yesterday, and to join a regional webinar. Again, I'm not sure how many pharmacy technicians in community did manage to join that, but there is a recording if people wish to view it. If you have got any pharmacy technicians working in community that aren't signed up, then I will leave the QR code on there for people to sign up. So there's also the LLR Teaching Forum. So this has been set up by UHL. There's a variety of topics. It's every fortnight on alternate Tuesdays and Thursdays. But again, I don't think there's a lot of pharmacy staff. This is for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. I don't think there is a lot of attendance from community pharmacy. Like I said before, I do completely appreciate, you're very, very busy. You're the backbone of pharmacy. But do keep an eye out if you are able to of the topics, because there may be some topics on there that do interest you and that are relevant to community pharmacy. I think Paul Gilbert's potentially done one before, or done a section on one of them before. So again, if it's not something that you're part of, I would advise to join the mailing list for that one. You don't have to attend every session. I certainly don't, but if there is any topics on there which I do think are interesting, then it's worth joining for. So there's also the pharmacy clinical services evaluation. So NHS England have conducted a non-for-profit organisation to conduct evaluation of the clinical services that are currently under the community pharmacy contractual framework. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I'm hoping that you are. But there is a survey that you can take part in just to get your input on the CPCF and the impact it's having on your staff, how you're finding those challenges. But there is also an incentive to do that survey. So I think they're giving they're covering a locum cost should you be able to take part in that. For pharmacy technicians and pharmacy staff, I think from what I've read on it, they do need permission from their line manager. So I've put the information in the slide there if anyone wants to find out more or take part in that. But it's a great way for NHS England to find out how pharmacy staff and contractors are feeling with the new CPCF framework. So in June 2024, as you'll probably know, the pharmacy technicians are now able to work under a PGD. So I've put some relevant training on there for any pharmacy technicians wishing to work under a PGD. Now, when I have spoken to community pharmacy technicians in the past, some of them have been a little bit apprehensive about doing things like the flu vaccine, the COVID vaccines under a PGD, because they feel that it's not necessarily the role that they went into originally, which I completely understand, and I think that is fine. We're here to work within our scope of practice. But if people do want the additional training, then they want to work towards that. Whether some of them in community pharmacy are already doing so, I've not come across any as yet. But the information is on there for some further training in regards to that. It would be really great to see pharmacy technicians in community pharmacy delivering under PGDs, because I think a lot of the time when I worked in community pharmacy a number of years ago, there wasn't necessarily a massive difference between a dispenser and a pharmacy technician. So for me, I think it's really exciting, but I am aware some pharmacy technicians may not want to do that service. So then I've put a few training opportunities on there that are relevant to community pharmacy. So CPP are doing a course at the moment for the community pharmacy technician advanced role training. and they're also doing the accuracy checking program, which I believe 50% of those are being funded. So if you have got any pharmacy technicians working in any of your pharmacies that do want to do the accuracy checking program, that's obviously a really good opportunity for them, and it will also help hopefully free up your pharmacists to do some of the other roles in the pharmacy. And then ProPharmace have also got some training available. So they've got the educational supervisor training, which I've recently completed myself. It only takes 3 months, and they've done it in quite nice small chunks, so it doesn't take up too much of your time. But that's given me some more knowledge to be able to train a pre-registration pharmacy technician. So that may be useful for either yourselves or your pharmacy technicians in the workplace to help train up for the future. And then they've also got the DPP educational supervisor course as well, which I think is still quite a short course, but they're both free to attend. So again, it's great opportunities if it's something that you're interested in. So the next slide, I have to say, I'm not in any way taking any payment from this company or have anything to do with them at all. But I was on a webinar earlier this week, and it was designed by a pharmacy technician, and it came up, and I'd never heard of it before. I don't know if anybody has seen it at the pharmacy show or knows about it already. But I've put a little video in here, which is, it's only a minute long, and it just made me think that if I was working in community pharmacy, I really would have wished that this was around when I worked in community pharmacy. So it's just an idea if anybody has a lot of CDs that are liquids, and particularly methadone, where the balance checks are taking you quite some time. It's definitely something to have a think about. But I'll show you the video so you can get a better idea of what it is, hoping that it works anyway.
I don't think we can hear it, Rose, because I don't think the settings are correct on. We could just see the video, we couldn't hear anything.
Okay, I'll talk you through it. It's quite self-explanatory anyway.
Lovely.
So the idea behind it is rather than having to, when you're doing your CD balance checks for liquids, rather than having to empty them into the conicals, making sure that staff members are reading it right and then pouring it back in, and obviously all those germs that are on there, even though they're washed each time, you are also still left with some residual liquid. So the idea of this ruler that you order in is that you can do your balance checks holding it next to the bottles of the liquid without having to open the cap. I just thought it was quite fascinating. Whether people have many liquid CDs anymore, I don't know, but I just thought it was worth sharing with you because I was quite fascinated by it. And then finally, just a little bit of food for thought. So this is one of the things that's came up in the Midlands leadership group, is the discussion as to whether the role pharmacy technician and the registered pharmacy technician name is still valid. Obviously we are called pharmacy technicians, but a lot of the roles are no longer technical, and some of them are leaning more towards clinical roles. So it's just a question, if you wanted to go home, like, well, you're at home, but if you wanted to think about it, feed back to me, then I'm happy to feed anything back to the Midlands Leadership Group as to whether you think that title is still relevant, or whether you think that actually pharmacy technicians are more clinical, given the newer opportunities that are out there for pharmacy technicians. And that is everything from me. So I've got, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask me. Apologies on the technical difficulties at the beginning. I have popped my email there, so if you've got anything that you want to ask me that you think about afterwards, please don't hesitate to drop me an email.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rose. Are there any questions for Rose in terms of what she's presented, or just anything around technician or technician support? Appreciate it's a challenge as well. There's not many, I don't know how many technicians. And that's another thing, Rose, is the challenge. We don't know how many technicians we have within LLR. Even though they're on the register, we don't know. But if there are any specific questions for Rose, please do pop them in the chat or raise your hand. No? No questions? Rose, so you're looking for what kind of candidate are you looking for potentially from community pharmacy to join the leadership group? What would the ideal candidate look like?
So the ideal candidate would be somebody that's got experience in community pharmacy, but also is probably either working towards delivering under a PGD, or looking at working towards that, and just a wide range of experience, really. It doesn't have to be somebody even that's senior, but somebody that is willing to obviously take time out of their working week to join the meetings as and when they are. So the meetings are usually bi-monthly, so it's not every day that we would need somebody to join a meeting, or every week.
And I guess the follow-up question would be from those that probably ears are pricked off about meeting attendance, is there any remuneration, and if they're having to do it in their own time or during working hours as well?
Yeah, so usually it is in working time. There isn't normally any obviously money or time given for that, so it tends to be, we try and do them over lunchtime, but I know for myself some of the meetings happen on a day off, so again it is just time out of my that I don't get paid for. It's more of like a voluntary role as such, but it's about being able to have an impact in the pharmacy technician profession and ways in which we can improve what we do.
Brilliant. Any other questions for anybody? Right, well, if you do think of any questions, guys, feel free to pop it in the chat and I'll make sure I'll submit them back to Rose. Rose, I will put your email address in the chat as well. Feel free to join us, but thank you for presenting to the group tonight as well. Genuinely appreciate that. And like I said, you're more than welcome to stay on and listen to the remainder of our webinar as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna go back to my slide, and I'm very conscious of time as well, because I know we all want to hear what Gareth has to say in terms of those updates. But I'm just going to quickly interject, and once my slides work, I'm just going to take this opportunity to give you a quick update before I hand over to Gareth, if that's okay. And the first thing I really wanted to bring to your attention was the ENT training sessions that we've organised. So there have been two ENT practical face-to-face sessions that have been organised, one of which has already occurred, and there's one still outstanding, which is happening at the end of the month on the 29th. There are still some places available. So if you do want to take advantage of that training, it's free. Please do. I'll put the link in the chat shortly as well, but you do need to register. So there are still places available for that. We do recommend that you bring your own otoscope as well, and Gareth and Paul will be there to support the event. And yesterday and just last week, we held two sessions on dermatological pharmacy first conditions. And I know from speaking to many of you after even last night's session, you all found it incredibly informative and useful. So we'll get that recording up on the website shortly as well. So we're very conscious of that. So please do bear with us. And once that recording is available, we will share that with you. The next thing I just wanted to quickly bring to your attention was just around prescribing switching information, something incredibly important. So I have circulated this by email, but I just wanted to make sure you hadn't bypassed it. So the ICB have recently made a review and as a result have made some cost-effective changes to prescribing habits or switches. And we've just recently had the 24-25 list of what that means and looks like as well. It is available on our website. I've just taken a snippet there for you. But again, it's available on our website, and I strongly urge you to have a look for all your pharmacies so that you can manage your stock and also answer any queries if there are any patients that are affected by some of the switches as well. And the final thing that I just wanted to highlight was just around the locally commissioned services survey. So for many years, myself and the team have been asking Leicestershire County Council for a number of changes with regards to locally commissioned services, namely EHC, but also stop smoking, pharmacology, and the staph flu vaccinations, which we know are all locally commissioned services. Now, there's a couple of concerns that we've raised as an LPC directly to them. And as a result of raising those concerns for a number of years, probably more than 12 months, to be fair, commissioners have now decided that they would like contractors to participate, not just contractors, but pharmacists as well, delivering the service, to engage and participate in this survey. This is essentially to decipher how, in terms of service fee, what was just one of the things that was being addressed in the survey, but also in terms of workforce pressures. So thinking about, is there anything different that they need to do with commissioners and need to consider? But they can't do that without the information from you. They really need to hear that from you. So whether you're a contractor, whether you're a pharmacist or even a locum pharmacist, and then some of you are that have joined us this evening, do please, we strongly urge you to complete the survey. And also, if you've not or you're not delivering some of these locally commissioned services, but actually have the desire to, it'd be important to feed that back as well and give your opinions, as your feedback is important. The deadline for that is the 11th of November. And again, I will circulate that link in the chat shortly as well. So there's quite a lot of information there, and appreciate you might not all retain it, but it will be available on the recording shortly, which Kate will upload after tonight's event. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Gareth. Gareth, I'm going to give you about 25 minutes because I'm just conscious we've got to hand over to Sam, if that's okay. So Gareth, I'm going to hand over to you to discuss the update to the thresholds and the top tips for Pharmacy First, please. Are you there, Gareth?
Yes, I am. I think we're in business. Can you see the pretty pictures? Can you see this first slide?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And just before I jump in there, I would just like to reinforce what you've just mentioned, Rashri, about feeding back through that survey to the local authority. If I could suggest one thing, if we could all be on this one page, the suggestion is that the local authority adopts the NHS's approach to commissioning services. As you know, they adopt a tendering process, which is a real palaver. Pharmacies are not so brilliant at putting tenders together. We have not needed to, because the NHS approach is to put a local enhanced service together. That's a single service level agreement that goes out to the whole pharmacy, the pharmacy contractor base, and you can sign up to it or you can choose not to sign up to it. And it's got common training, common service specification, etc. If they would do that, it would make life so much easier. And the flip side of that is ditching this blessed tendering process, which is a total waste of time. Anyway, I digress. Let me crack on with my remit for this evening. We're looking at the new thresholds for Pharmacy First and how are we going to achieve them? And let's spend a bit of time thinking about that. Thankfully, there's been some good news this week with further interim reductions in the Pharmacy First threshold targets. This table shows the revised schedule of thresholds through to March. The threshold increased from 20 in September to 30 for October. However, this figure for October has now been reduced back down to 20. So hopefully we will all now be able to achieve this. And it will stay at 20 for the remainder of this year. Then it will increase by 25% in January, February, and then on up to 30 gateway services for March, which will be challenging for many contractors. So a little respite for a few months, and we will need to use this time to develop strategies for growing our Pharmacy First performances so that you can top the higher thresholds in the new year. So we will spend a little time now reflecting together on how pharmacies might be able to influence their Pharmacy First clinical pathway monthly performances. I don't have a magic wand here, but I do have a collection of hints and tips which might collectively get you over that line every month. This slide shows the value of each qualifying unit of service for October and for November. The intent being to encourage and incentivise contractors to go after Pharmacy First service opportunities. Simply being commercially mindful that each service magically increases in value from £15 to £65 might help you find that little bit of extra energy. For example, to build up referral volumes from your local surgeries. Once you get across that threshold, all of the services, all of those 20 services jump in value to £65 per unit of service. So keep that in your mind. Forget about the 15, think about that 65, and you'll find a little bit more commercial energy. This slide shows the value of each qualifying unit of service for January and February. As you can see, it is still a target worth aiming for at £55 per unit of service if you hit the January target. And then from March, you'll need to hit 7 gateways every week or 3 every 2 days. And the income per unit of service at that point going forward is not to be sniffed at. It would be still the highest unit of service for any service commissioned from community pharmacy. So hitting the gateway thresholds. Here are some thoughts and ideas. No one of them is a silver bullet. Rather, I would suggest we need to be constantly mindful of them all. And I'll be asking you all for your thoughts, extra thoughts and ideas at the end. So refreshing the message to practices. You've seen that green and red table. When were you last around to speak to practices? Things have moved on from CPCS and we're over 6 months now in. Think of an excuse, a reason to pop around and to refresh the message about Pharmacy First with your local practice. Consider the fact that surgery staff are forever turning over. So surgery staff from January, February, March, who might have been familiar with the referrals and CPCS and Pharmacy First, might have moved on. So is there an opportunity to say to them that you would be happy to run through the training? Focus on the message. We'll consider that in a moment, trying to focus on the most significant bits. Focus on the key people. Who are the key people you need to speak to? We'll think about that. Deliver the message. I'm going to recommend you do that personally rather than sending members of staff or whatever. Other little ideas throwing in here. I've spoken to a pharmacist who's put little posters up in local primary schools and nurseries indicating some impetigo symptoms and popping to the local pharmacy. We've heard of winter pressures. Can Pharmacy First help practices with winter pressures? Again, I think we can package things slightly differently for this time of year and strike a chord. So your opinions, please. We'll be asking for those in a moment. We want to grow this list. So this was the green and red referral guide that you've seen before. You might notice there's some red highlights on there. as I said, reception teams will be familiar with this. It was for CPCS. There's around 72 green minor ailment symptoms there, which can be referred into Pharmacy First. So you can say that this version has been refreshed, helpfully showing that the 7 clinical conditions have actually always been there. And these are not 7 new conditions. I don't know if you can see my pointer. There's earache sitting there. There's sore throat, for example. So these are not new conditions. I think it's been overinflated that what's new in Pharmacy First, given the NHS messaging. So print out copies of this refreshed version, not this one with the yellow banner, and use it as an opportunity to revisit Pharmacy First discussions with your local practices. Point out that the old CPCS treatment pathways were governed by your limited OTC treatment options, whereas now with the expanded Pharmacy First, the pathways for 7 of those conditions that have already been there, 7 of those pathways have been extended. There's a way of explaining it. So the care pathway for earache, it was limited by your OTC options. That pathway has now been extended. Now we're starting to rationalize the clinical pathways expression. So those pathways have been extended. They've been extended for and on behalf of the pharmacist. So the pharmacist can now offer prescription-only medicines, which takes that pathway a lot further than it was before. At the same time, you could say to reception teams that it may actually be easier to continue referring using this highlighted referral guide with its easy symptom terminology. It does not take 3 or 4 symptoms to be included in the referral from the surgery. So if someone has got acute otitis media with all of the various symptoms, all the receptionist needs to do is bang together an electronic referral that simply says earache and leave it up to you, for example, to decide if the earache is infected or not. Receptionists are pleased to hear that it's not quite as complicated as they perhaps thought it was. Some reception teams actually do like this additional referral guide, which looks specifically at those 7 conditions where a prescribable treatment may be supplied by the pharmacist. And discussing this can be an interesting aspect of your refreshed message with your local surgery team. This whilst reassuring the reception teams that they can still use that simple CPCS symptoms as earache or insect bite or whatever. So a version of this came out from the NHS at the start. We'll look at that in a moment. So, but they can actually set this aside and use those highlighted symptoms from the CPCS guide that we were looking at a moment. And if you do use this, perhaps ask receptionists to avoid mentioning the actual diagnostic terms in the white boxes. You see the white boxes there at the top, because that mentioning those diagnostic terms influences expectations for antibiotics, and receptionists will know how it feels when patients arrive almost demanding prescriptions for antibiotics. So let's have a look. Have a close look at this slide. If you've seen, well, I'm hoping you've seen exactly this one, because this next one has been floating around Leicester from January. This is one that came out from Central NHS, and it is really very unhelpful as far as supporting receptionists in making good referrals. So there are very few proper symptoms there. We'll just jump back and let you see the difference. So if you went to the surgery, ask what version they're looking at. If it's this one, they need to set it aside if you present them with the more up-to-date one. So you've got these 2. I would suggest that you print out colour copies of these guides for the practice, and ideally laminate them. Laminated resources somehow magically are considered much more valuable and are more likely to be pinned up within the receptionist workstation. So consider how many receptionist workstations there are at your local surgery, and do a pair of laminated copies of each of these for each workstation. It's not just the person on the front desk. There will be the other receptionist workstations as well. You'll often see them there with their telephone headsets on. If you think about it, if you give a single copy of these to the reception team, especially unlaminated copies, they'll get passed around and lost, and you'll be no further on within 2 or 3 days. So hopefully you will feel that there is a substantive amount of content here to merit a local refresh or update on the service with the surgery. Oh, and for goodness sake, don't give them a black and white copy. I've seen that done. That just is nonsensical because it simply doesn't work. There's typically quite a turnover of reception staff that I've mentioned. So create an opportunity to provide that refresher training for the new team members. What I'm sharing with you here is a page from the LPC website, Surgery Support Resources, and you can see there's a training video on there, and minor ailments and the 7 clinical conditions, those things are on there as well. So if you do go around to the surgery, you can print these things off, or you can send them an email with a URL to that web page, and they can look at the training video themselves. You could ask them when the next protected learning time session is planned. You'll be aware that the surgery closes some afternoons for training. Well, that's protected learning time, and offer to provide a training session for the whole reception team. Perhaps suggest a 25-minute training session where you play that video and you can download it onto your laptop from the website and then discuss the points that's arising in it, for example, how to handle referral backs. Alternatively, please feel free to offer me as a resource to come and lead such a training session if you can make it happen. Focusing the message, 7 clinical conditions, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And unfortunately, you will not always get an opportunity to present the full story on Pharmacy First to the practice. So you'll need to make the most of lesser opportunities. So let's have a look at this. We know from this huge data set from the Company Chemists Association, 42,000 Pharmacy First extended pathway referrals. 57% of them are accounted for by just 2 of the conditions, sore throats and UTIs. 71% if you add in acute otitis media. So my advice, when you get a precious short moment to talk about pharmacy service, is just to focus on these 2 or 3 conditions where the verbal opportunity is limited. I would suggest even it would be better to mention these 2 or 3 conditions rather than to try and squeeze in mention of all 7 of them. You're not going to get infected insect bites much this time of year anyway. Focus on key people. It's important now more than ever to be strategic when developing business relationships with local surgeries. So who would you say might be the most influential person in developing good engagement, with the Pharmacy First service? Let's open this up to the floor from the chat. Why don't you use the chat and pick who you think would be the most important person at the surgery if you want to get a head of steam going with Pharmacy First. Are you familiar with using the chat? Just open up the chat there and tell me who you think. If you could pick someone from the surgery. We've got a practice manager there from Dilsha. Thanks, Dilsha. What else does people think? Receptionist there from Kishan. Right, well. It's none of those above. It was the reception team manager. So it is certainly the reception team manager. Remember this, the reception team manager is in charge of team training for the whole of the reception team. There will be in charge of systems and processes for providing referrals. They'll be in charge of the guidelines for team use. So if you present with those highlighted green and red resources, they're not going to get used if the reception team manager doesn't want to use them? Okay, so the reception team manager, followed closely perhaps by the practice manager, is the most important person. Do you know who the reception team manager is at the local surgery? Why are they more important than a GP or the practice manager? Well, remember there's a big difference between stop-go management control and the engagement that we're trying to achieve here. So whilst GP partners and practice managers have stop-go control, no one is actually asking them for a stop-go decision because the ICB has already given a green light to Pharmacy First. Even if your surgery has only sent 1 or 2 referrals in the last 6 months, that tells you there has not been a stop put on it. It's simply, it's there, but no one's engaging with it. So the person you need to engage with is the practice manager. So the reception team leader. Identify them, work on them, share how Pharmacy First will give their reception team precious extra referral options when GP appointments are scarce and appointment times are over a week long. Advise them that the electronic pharm refer system just needs an NHS number copied and pasted, a symptom, a minor ailment symptom, and a local pharmacy selected, hit send, and the referral is done. It's really quite easy. If the reception team lead is keen, they will most likely have the approval of the practice. So here's a salutary question, not trying to embarrass anyone. What is the name of the reception team lead or the reception team manager in your local surgery? Not asking you to put this one in the chat. You might know 1 or 2 names and faces, but do you know who the team manager is? That's the key question. So I'm saying this to encourage even the most experienced pharmacists out there to think again and to consider the working relationships that you have with local surgeries and can they be improved and developed. So that was an easy one. What else have we got on here? Would you recognize the reception team or your practice manager if they walked into the pharmacy? Would your pharmacy technicians know who the reception team people are? They might know them better than some pharmacists, I suppose. But what if some of these key people, reception team manager, the practice manager, or the GP came into the pharmacy? Would your staff leave them standing in the queue with other customers? Or would you suggest to them that pop around into the dispensary? They might not have time to pop into the dispensary, but at least you'll have asked. You'll have made a personal team-orientated gesture, and it will have made an impression. Don't just leave them standing there about 6 back in the queue like a lemon with everybody else. So make that gesture, say, oh, hello, name their name, come on, pop around here for a few minutes. Have you got a few minutes? Let me show you some of these other bits and pieces. Have you seen this farm outcomes? This is how your referrals pop through here, and build that relationship. So I would suggest you aim for being on first name terms, at least with those pivotal people from where perhaps a third or a half or even more of your business turnover comes from. So contrive good reasons to pop in, and remember there is nothing positive or progressive about requests to change prescriptions where an item is out of stock, for example. So think about that interaction. You're popping into the surgery, you're wanting to develop a progressive relationship with them, and what have you got in your hand? Some paperwork with errors on that needs to be changed. That's not going to develop a good positive progressive working relationship. So reflect on that. Whereas if you had a patient with a high blood pressure or ABPM result, why don't you personally pop over with the report and discreetly say that you've just done an ABPM on one of their patients, not one of my patients, one of their patients, and you were so concerned that you felt it would be best just to pop across and to stress the importance of the report being seen by a doctor today. I've done that without unduly alarming the patient. I've said, okay, the situation, if we've just done the blood pressure check, it's alarmingly high. And then I said, do you know what? I'm just popping over to the surgery. I was planning on going. Why don't we pop over together? I've got this report. Let me just go across with you and present that to the reception team. And you lean into the reception and say, here's this report. Don't let this patient leave here without seeing a doctor today. And you're building a progressive relationship. In conversations with practices, you could try and tag Pharmacy First with the annual winter pressures planning processes. Suggest you would be happy if they electronically just dumped all sore throats, sinus congestion, earaches, colds and flu symptoms on Pharmacy First as part of shared practice winter pressures planning. Mention that the pharmacy should be the default response for uncomplicated UTIs, perhaps all year round. But, winter pressures planning is something that's happening right now in surgeries. Just say to them, look, hit the simple symptoms on the CPCS list and just bang them across to me electronically, and we will take them out of your hair. Nearly finished here. Oh yes, this is a miscellaneous point which I'm chucking in here. Many pharmacists are frustrated by verbal referrals which may not pass the gateway criteria and thus do not qualify for a service fee. Whereas all electronically referred interventions do attract a service fee, whether the gateway point is passed or not. Okay. So all electronically referred interventions get you that £15 fee. The key point to communicate here, if you're struggling with receptionists sending verbal referrals, the key point to communicate here is that signposting is not the same as a referral. Those are the two key terms. Signposting is what's happening if they're verbally telling patients to pop across. Signposting is not the same as an electronic referral. This is how I present the key differences, which include, electronically referred patients will always be seen by a pharmacist in their private consultation room, whereas signposted patients, they're likely to be seen by a chemist counter assistant, perhaps after some queuing up. A proper electronic referral confirms the formal transfer of care from the surgery to the pharmacy. This is actually quite an important point, quite a persuasive point. It's important to remember that the patient came to the surgery first. Remember, you're talking to the practice manager or the reception manager. Just remind them the patient came to you first, and that creates a duty of care on the surgery. An electronic referral will therefore helpfully record that the care has been formally transferred over to the pharmacy, and therefore the reception team are doing their jobs properly. DNAs or did not attend can be problematic if the patient says yes to a verbal signposting and then they choose not to go to the pharmacy. What if the patient does not take the advice and went straight home instead? They didn't want to miss the bus or whatever. They went straight home and perhaps the symptoms worsened, maybe over a weekend. Whereas if they had sent you an electronic referral, one of your pharmacy team would be phoning them at some point to arrange a consultation, which of course would helpfully chase them up. If they did, if they were at home, you'd be catching them at home, and it would reduce the risk of patients not attending. And there's also the electronic audit evidence. Electronic referrals can be reported on to illustrate compliance and to show how patients are accessing care sooner rather than later. A final point here, really, just said to them, pharmacists like the professional courtesy of receiving a referral because they can anticipate or phone the patient rather than them just turning up. Because otherwise, Sod's Law dictates that patients will just arrive during a frantically busy time in the pharmacy or when staff are at lunch. And so the patient may have to wait longer than they might have expected to. So the consultation gets off to an unsatisfactory start for all involved. So the bottom line there is persuade them, encourage them to send electronic messages rather than signposting. The transfer of care is the important thing. It stops the receptionist getting into bother if the patient didn't take their advice.
Yeah,
Mindful of...
Sorry,
How many
Gareth,
minutes? About 2 minutes left, Rashri?
Yes, if that's okay. Thanks, Gareth.
Okay, I thought you might be interested to see some screenshots of the farm refer system, which receptionists look at when a patient presents, when a pharmacy first patient presents. You can see that it takes them straight into a triage process. And you see in the bottom left, skip triage to input patient details. So this is what reception teams are faced with, and we want them to skip this triage because it takes them down a clinical rabbit hole, which is beyond their training, really. So we would suggest that they skip triage by clicking on that button at the end, and to leave the diagnosing, which is what the triage is all about, to the pharmacist. Here's an example. I don't know if you can see very clearly there, but you can see the sorts of questions that the triage presents to receptionists, and you can see that they're really not very appropriate for the receptionist to be asking. So simply, farm refer has gone beyond beyond where they needed to. Receptionists can skip this by skipping the triage button and straight into, this is the CPCS list. They're in alphabetical order. Just click a button there and hit send. So I thought you might be interested to see that. And then I will share this schematic diagram. It's designed to help pharmacists explain how minor ailments and the 7 conditions all fit together into the overall pharmacy first service. It shows here that the symptoms from the 7 clinical conditions are really only a subset of the CPCS symptoms, and referral backs are a subset within that. So all of in that purple box, that's everything that's within the list of 72, and the 7 conditions are a subset of that. And you can see in the big box that all patients a year and over can be referred electronically for a pharmacy first minor ailment service. Let's just populate that with not with theory, but with practice. So here's a patient, a 40-year-old patient with earache. So I'm sure you're frustrated with receptionists sending patients who are that age outside of the 17 years with earache. Well, let's just think about this for a moment. If that 40-year-old patient with earache was referred as a pharmacy first minor ailment, you would be paid £15 because it's a minor ailment. You would look in the patient's ear. You might be looking at an earful of wax, for example. You could sell them something, whatever, and you would get your £15 for examining that patient as a minor ailment and processing it through farm outcomes as a minor ailment. If you can use this when you're speaking to receptionists to say, look, that the PGD only allows me to supply antibiotics to patients aged 1 to 17 with acute otitis media. So earache, whilst is one of the minor ailment conditions, I cannot supply antibiotics. This is the limitations of that PGD. It says in this green box, note that it's unlawful for a pharmacist to supply antibiotics to a 40-year-old patient with acute otitis media. So it's simpler for the receptionist if they simply stick to simple symptom terminology, simple referrals, rather than going down that triage route and trying to send a patient with acute otitis media, because you might have to refer them back. You can have a look at this a little bit later if you wish, but that's me essentially done. This last little slide shows that about 18% of patients going to practices are going there with minor ailments, and you can really help lighten the load.
Gareth,
do you want to ask if there's any questions? That's me done, Rashri.
Thank you so much, Gareth, and apologies I've had to cut you short. I'm just conscious it's nearly 9 o'clock. If there are any questions, do feel free to add them into the chat, and we'll come back to Gareth in a moment. So if you want to just try and articulate your questions in the chat, please do so, and we'll come back to Gareth, because I know there's probably quite a few questions. I know I've had one since you've been talking from a contractor as well, Gareth. So, but I feel that the questions are probably, and the answers are going to take much longer than what Sam's going to have to give us an update on as well. So if we can just pause there for now and gather your thoughts on pharmacy first, add them into the chat. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to hand over to Sam, if that's okay, who's been waiting patiently. Sam, I know you just wanted to come on to give us a quick update around vaccinations, etc. So can I just hand over to you? And
yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
I promise I won't take up much of your time because I wasn't really invited and I've just gate crashed, hoping for a few minutes. So thank you, everybody, for allowing me to just have a few minutes of your time. The slide that you should be able to see on your screen just gives you an indication of how we're doing with the COVID and flu vaccinations. I thought you might be really interested. So the top table is COVID, gives a breakdown for LLR by Rutland, by city, by county, how many people we've got living in those areas who are eligible for COVID vaccination. The next column along tells you how many vaccinations we've done to date. So these are figures as of close of play yesterday. And then the final column gives you a percentage of the overall total. So as you can see, county is doing pretty well. City not so well, and Rutland at 19.9. So the table at the bottom gives you an indication of the flu vaccination data as well. So same sort of format, broken down by area, who's in scope, how many have been vaccinated, and the percentages of those eligible population. I will share these slides through Raspberry to share out to the group. So you can pore over them if you're a bit of a data nut. On the next slide, I want to share with you is we're running some specialist vaccination clinics for people with a learning disability. These are out at Loughborough at Emmanuel Church Hall for anyone aged 5+. So what's special about those clinics is that we give everybody at least 20 minutes. There's a phone number on this slide that people can proactively call in to book their clinic appointment. And during that conversation, we'll take into account any other additional needs that we need to allow for. So, of course, if they need an hour, they can have an hour. If they need half a day, they can have half a day. So that's absolutely fine. But also what we're offering with these clinics at Emmanuel Church Hall is the availability for people who prefer it to have a drive-through vaccination, so they can be vaccinated from the comfort of their own vehicle if that's what they wish as well. The next slide gives you some details about the roving healthcare unit that's providing walk-in COVID, flu, MMR, pertussis and RSV vaccinations. It gives you the locations and the times it's at those locations and who's in scope for each of those vaccinations. So again, walk-ins for that roving unit. This is something new that we're offering as part of this campaign. We've developed some shelf wobblers, which you can have if you wish. Again, free of charge. You're probably familiar with them in terms of what a shelf wobbler is. So it just sticks on the shelf underneath the product to promote the product. But each one of these has a special message on. So it's promoting either COVID vaccine or MMR vaccine, or just generating awareness around vaccinations in case you're pregnant. But if you'd like any of those, just send me an email saying which ones you'd like, and I'll get them posted out to you, again free of charge. And it doesn't matter if you're in the COVID campaign or you're not. You're more than welcome to have these free promotional materials. And also we're doing some prescription bag stickers as well. And again, these are free of charge. So if you wanted to use those, it's just to help promote to people who are at clinically at risk that they may buy their medication or their illness, be entitled to a COVID or a flu vaccination. So it's just about heightening an awareness amongst people. And that was it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Sam. Thank you. And apologies, we were pushed for time as well, but that's been really insightful just to look at where we are. How are we comparing with other systems?
We're doing really well, really well. We got off to a great start when we compare our uptake against other systems across the Midlands, and we're really pleased where we're at.
Well,
so
well
we're
done,
expecting
everyone.
it to sort of continue for the next couple of weeks probably, and then I think activity will start to sort of tail off a bit, but we've got off to a cracking start, so thank you for all very much.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Sam. Yes, and if you can share the slides, and I'll put your email address in the chat
Absolutely.
as well, so people can pick that up and hopefully order those freebies from you for the wobblers. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Feel free to stay on, or if you need to dash off, appreciate that you do. I'm going to hand over back to Gareth. If you do have any questions for Sam as well, please do feel free to use the chat function. I know Gareth has been busy answering some of the questions that we've had, and but obviously we've got Sam still as well, so if there are any questions around vaccinations, flu, do pop them in the chat as well. So Gareth, can I just ask you to unmute yourself? And there was one question which I saw from Divya, and I'm glad Divya was here tonight to ask that question, because I think that's quite a misconception, isn't it? Or there seems to be confusion around what is passed through the gateway criteria. I've lost the question now, but yes. So do you want to just go through them, Gareth?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Looking for. So let me just make the point with an illustration. If a patient presents at surgery reception with earache, and let's say we've got a insight and we know that patient has got an earful of wax. But in the first instance, that patient with an earful of wax is presenting at surgery reception complaining of earache. If that patient is sent to the pharmacy by way of a proper electronic referral, that's through Pharm Refer straight into your services inbox in Pharm Outcomes, or by an email, if that patient is referred to you electronically, and you respond to them when in due course when you see them, you will be paid £15. You will process that as a patient with a minor ailment. A Pharmacy First minor ailments service is what you will be providing. You'll look in their ear, you'll spot the wax, you'll flog them some olive oil or whatever, and that's how that is processed. However, if the receptionist says to that same patient, if they just verbally refer the patient across to the pharmacy and they stroll in through the door and no formal referral whatsoever, you might look in their ear, you spot that old wax, you will not be paid £15. You might get a few pence for selling a bottle of olive oil, but there will be no £15 fee. So I hope that has helped to explain that. Let's have a look. Are people happy with how I explained about that 40-year-old patient with earache? Let's have a look. I
know John can ask about the walk-in patients, which you've answered, and how to reverse that, or how can we make that. So thanks for answering that. If there are any questions that's not been asked, or you just have a query, do feel free to add it in the chat or pop your hand up. There's only a small group left, or to be fair, so we are all friends here, so there's no silly question to be asked. Because actually, if you're thinking it, probably a lot of other people are.
So yes, it's only the 7 clinical conditions that qualify. That was one of the questions. Yeah. Do focus on your reception team. If you do get a chance, play the tune. The tune is protected learning time. They're often looking for content for their protected learning time. The schedule for their protected learning time is in the diary. Sometimes it gets quite close to the date before they actually have an agenda for training for that protected time. I'm happy to go along and support you. Usually it's a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, isn't it, that they close for the protected learning time, and we can run through some of those things and get them up to speed. We could discuss things such as referral backs, how best to do that, how to manage patient expectations and so forth. There's lots of things that we can do.
Absolutely.
There's no point in asking, for example, a practice pharmacist. I've had more problems trying to get the message across to surgeries when there's a practice pharmacist there, because they can think of more reasons to do other things. It's really quite simple. We've got the simple symptoms on that green red. If a patient's got any one of those, they refer. End of story, no discussion. We don't need other opinions about what's right or wrong because the service specification has already been determined. We don't need the doctor to say yes or no, that's a good idea, because the ICB has already said so. So you speak to reception manager and offer some protected learning time training. They might go and ask the practice manager, is that okay? Are you happy with that? Is that a good idea? They'll come back to you and you crack on with it. I'm happy to turn up and support you.
Thank you. And I've put the link in for booking your free support visit through Gareth as well. So if you are interested in taking advantage of that and need a bit of help just to have a conversation with the practice, please, use the link to book that appointment in with Gareth as well. But Rose has asked the question, why would you go to the reception team manager over pharmacy teams and surgery?
Sorry, say again.
Rose has asked, why would you go to the reception team manager over pharmacy teams in the surgery?
Pharmacy teams do not refer patients into pharmacy first. If you think about it, the dynamic, the receptionist team, led by the reception manager, they stream patients to clinicians in the surgery or elsewhere. So GPs, nurses, and practice pharmacists, they receive patients who have already been streamed. They do not do the streaming. So it's the practice manager, so that the reception manager and her reception team that will be streaming patients, referring patients electronically. That's what we're aiming for. If a practice pharmacist is not involved in that, why do you want them at the meeting? They receive patients. They receive patients that have been streamed to them by the receptionist, just the same as the community pharmacist. I'm hoping that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah. Gareth, Reggie has asked or made a comment. Gareth, that 40-year-old, can that patient be treated as self-referral into pharmacy first? So that example that you gave earlier on in your slide.
So if that 40-year-old patient with earache just turned up at the counter and there was no electronic referral, you do not get a pharmacy first service fee of £15. There's no difference between that patient turning up unannounced of their own volition. Perhaps they might have responded to an advert that you put in the pharmacy. You get no more money there than you would if the receptionist at the surgery verbally referred the patient to you. What's key is the receptionist sending an electronic referral through PharmRefer into your Pharm Outcomes or an email referral. For wrong reasons or right reasons, that's simply how it is. You get paid a £15 fee for responding to a surgery, a referral coming from the surgery. There's another way of putting it. If the receptionist could not refer the patient to the pharmacist, that patient, 40-year-old patient with an earful of wax, is going to be referred to a GP. So the logic is it's cheaper for the pharmacist to see that patient than it is for the patient to be seen by an expensive GP. So that patient brings a £15 referral fee with them.
Anything else? Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And Reggie, I hope that answered your question. I'm just conscious of time and I'm going to have to draw a line soon because it's almost quarter past. But Rose has come back to you saying, would you not prefer the PCN pharmacy teams to deliver training and refresher training to surgery staff to save your time? So I'm not.
The answer is, and I'm generalizing here, not generalizing wildly, but the surgery pharmacists, practice pharmacists don't know the service.
Yeah, I'd agree.
They don't know for example, the scenarios that I've just been describing to you about that 40-year-old patient, they do not know the ins and outs about it. And then they'll start taking issue with what's allowed and not allowed in the PGD. You know, we can talk about that till the cows come home, and they will be happy to do that and criticize it and say, well, I'm not very happy with this or that or whatever else the PGD allows or doesn't allow. It is what it is. We don't want more clinical opinions. We simply want engagement with the national service specification as it is.
So Rose, just to reiterate, the pharmacy first, as well as it being the 7 clinical conditions, we're doing what we already are used to doing, which is the community pharmacy consultation service. So it's those minor or low acuity conditions as well. So it's about getting the referrals into community pharmacy. We're not asking for that clinical decision to be made at that point as well.
No, absolutely. I think it's just a shame. I know at my PCN we delivered the training initially to surgery staff, and it's a shame if you're feeling that the practice pharmacists are getting a bit too involved. It's not about that at all. We've actually done an audit on this to try and look at where we can improve referrals into the system, but it's a shame that that's not across the board for all of the surgeries across LLR. So it's real shame to hear that.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are some practices that aren't referring as well. Sorry.
Can I take this offline, Rose, and perhaps pop along and see you and learn from what process you're. What PCN are you with, Rose?
North West Leicestershire.
Actually, you've got
Bishop.
Yeah,
you've got Jane Lum and who else have you got up there?
We've got Pallavi Dowda that
and you've got and you've got Christine, haven't you?
Yeah.
You're remarkably blessed there, Rose, with some remarkably capable. So I would suggest your PCN is a bit of an exception, a very positive and progressive exception to the rule. But I will contact you offline, and I'd like to learn a little bit more from your perspective, please.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Rose. That's fantastic. Just draw a line in the sand. If there's any last-minute queries or comments, feel free to add them. If not, you can feel free to jump off. I just want to say thank you, Rose, for presenting to us tonight about the technician about the leadership group, and obviously trying to recruit a community pharmacy delegate into that. So again, going back to contractors and pharmacists, if you know somebody that might be interested, just to propel their own progression as well, and learnings, do get in touch with Rose. I have added her email in the chat as well. And of course, thank you to Sam, and finally thank you to Gareth as well for a great presentation, Gareth, by the way, and thank you for answering all those questions. And I'm sure there'll be more in the chat as well coming. But certainly, if you want to log off, feel free to. I'm just conscious of time, but we're always here. So if you think of a question outside of tonight's event, do email Gareth or myself, and we'll forward that on to Gareth as well. So thank you ever so much. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, there's 26 or 27 PCNs, and it's difficult to pitch something that works constructively across them all. So I hope I haven't upset anyone in Northwest Leicestershire with how I've presented things.
Thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.